All right, we're just going to get right into it because we got a lot of stuff to cover. Hi, my name is Neil Wyler, aka Grifter within this community. By day, I'm the global lead of active threat assessments for IBM X-Force, and by night, I run the technical operations for the Black Hat security briefings.
That role sounded a little new to you.
Oh, it is. It's shiny. It's still got some shine on it.
I'm Bart. I am the other half, and I, by day, am now a senior systems engineer at RSA, and by night, over Black Hat, DEF CON community stuff. We do all kinds of things.
Yeah, that title sounded new as well. Oh, shiny. All right. But we don't do this alone. We actually have a fairly large crew that helps us pull all of this off. And this is that crew right there. We'll talk a little bit more about where each, little subset of those folks come from. But aren't we adorable? Ow! Ow!
Yay!
What? Why? I don't have enough anxiety. I need that. All right. Yeah. So we do that with our NOC partners. Initially, when we started out doing the Black Hat NOC, I've been doing this now for 20 years. So when I started doing it, we rolled our own on everything. It was open source scripts and, basically put together with duct tape and spit.
A little bit of hope.
It got to a certain point where it just didn't scale as the show grew. And so we were like, we need additional help. We need to actually bring some enterprise type gear in here. And so we went down to the expo floor and we asked people if they would be willing to help us. And thankfully for us, we got a resounding yes every single time. And so we work with Palo Alto. Palo Alto Networks is our core, our firewalls. So they provide that to us, as well as some of their top tier engineers to support us while we're here, Singapore or Las Vegas. NetWitness. NetWitness is our logs, full packet capture, endpoint on some of the registration machines, and identity and access management. And we'll get into why we needed some of those things in a little bit. Cisco for Threat Grid, Umbrella, and we've also been using them for a threat intelligence platform as well. CommScope Ruckus, that is our switching and our access points. IronNet, IronNet's new this past summer. They came in at the US show. They provide some overlap. If there was a Venn diagram between NetWitness and IronNet, there would definitely be some overlap there. But as you are probably aware in the industry, there are some features that some folks do better than others, and some they don't do as well. And we found that we were like, okay, well, let's see what we can do to layer these on top of each other and see if we get to where we want to be. And having those two teams together, and they work side by side, not competitively, none of this is competitive, but to reach the goals that we want to. And so far, it's been a huge success. So thank you, IronNet, and welcome to the team. And then Gigamon, and Gigamon we're using essentially as a tap, just to mirror traffic to all the different tools and other things that we need.
You're selling Cisco short. We gave them some new jobs.
We did give Cisco. Sorry, Cisco.
They're doing MDM for us as well on tablets and such around registration.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute.
So architecture, quick diagram. We've talked about it a little bit if you've seen us talk. Keep it simple, stupid is definitely the mentality that we take. The simpler it is, hopefully the easier to troubleshoot, and then you can secure it and know exactly what's happening. So really quick, we had 600 meg of WAN connection at the show across a pair of HA5260 Palo Alto firewalls. Those feed into the Gigamon tap, which feeds all of our tools. You can see NetWitness, IronNet. We actually have another 5260 in tap mode, just taking that data, ingesting data, as well as any of the other tools that we use in the NOC. We've got Observium we used here. We do use OIP. We'll talk about that. You've seen that a little bit. And then an interesting thing at this show that's a little unique to what we do in Vegas that we haven't really talked about as much in the past. One of the issues that we run into in the international shows that we don't have in Vegas is we actually replaced the distribution switches, so all the closet switches in Las Vegas. So basically the only thing of the venue that we're using is the cables in the wall. That is not the case at these smaller regional shows. So there is some technical things to get around using their switches. So basically we tunnel everything back through the APs back to the controllers. And at that point, we can write our own VLAN tags to provide other networks beyond the hotel's infrastructure and keep that in line there. So one thing to that as well is that we provide all the wire drops off of the access points. So we've gone pretty much completely wireless. And then in the regional shows, they're providing us a bunch of that capability by tunneling back through to the controllers.
What gear do we do that with, Bart?
We talked about it all. Here we go. So obviously size-wise is a little bit smaller. So 3 5260s for Palo. They also have an M200 running Panorama. Cisco has Direct Gate Umbrella and Meraki SM for the MDM. Ruckus, we only have 2 controllers here and 32 APs, not as many. We have 3 ICX switches, NetWitness, a head unit hybrid, orchestrator, event stream analysis. I think we had 84 terabytes total storage, not necessarily used. And then 1 HC1 from Gigamon, and IronNet has a IS1510.
I think probably one of the stats on there for me that just shows the difference in the scale of the shows and the amount of stuff that we're doing is the number of switches, right?
Yes.
When we were updating the slide from the US to this, it went from 32 switches to 3, right? So the difference between the US show and a regional show is quite a bit.
So here's some of the dashboards that we see. OIP is what we were talking about. It's a little shiny dot shooting everywhere. We explained that a little bit before, but that is basically representative packets between hosts. We were not using it here. There's actually some redevelopment being done on it with Pope and some of the guys at Utah State that originally wrote it. So hopefully you'll see that bigger and better in the future.
Yeah, it's again, it's an open source project, so if you want to watch your traffic fly around and look like pew, 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 like you can just go download it. I think ShmooCon uses it as well in their NOC. Another dashboard that we have here is this was, again, so things changed, right? Now it's I want to say post-COVID, but we're still in it, right? But people don't want to touch all the keyboards or wipe down laptops and everything like we used to do. So now we're using iPads for registration and we're using iPhones for lead retrieval. And that means that we bring in those devices and then we also kind of want to keep an eye on them, right? Are they still on the network? Did somebody run off with them? We can remotely wipe them if we need to. And just a funny point here is that the reason that satellite image is so pulled back is because if we got any closer, it kept showing half of the devices across the river. And we were like, we knew that wasn't true. So we were like, okay, well, as long as those devices don't go further away from that part of the river, they probably are still on site. But if you are looking to steal an iPhone 7 from downstairs on the expo floor, now is your moment. Just hang out on the other side of the river until this ends, and then by then we won't know and you can just run away. So
this is IronNet and RSA. Again, visibility into the traffic, what they provide has become invaluable. Honestly, we were fighting with some issues with the Gigamon device, not any issues, but us getting it configured correctly. And the idea of not having the visibility into the network is obviously one of the biggest things that we do. I mean, we can set up a network. We've done that before, but we've really been able to grow and kind of evolve because of the visibility. So. General traffic stats from this show. So as normal, you can see the spikes during the day. A little different here without trainings. We see a lot of the unique traffic generally from those trainings. One interesting stat to talk about here is we actually saw less than 50% encrypted traffic.
Just less. Just a little slightly under half.
Normally a 60-40 split we see, and then like 80-20, or is it 90-10 in Asia? Asia's kind of a lot higher normally.
It was going up here too. I think in 2019 we were at 70-something%, maybe even higher.
And then the other interesting thing, and one of the big things that we've worked on for a long time is if you look at, I mean, you guys can't necessarily see that. We understand how difficult that is sometimes, but go back and steal the slides. A lot of AWS traffic. So for a long time, training courses were moving to cloud environments. We see demos and stuff moving to cloud environments. Just kind of indicative there of what we see as far as that type of traffic. And then lastly, the right one, just some different URL categories and how much traffic between all of that.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that the most data transferred By and large, that was all sent to AWS, to the cloud, right? So the chattiest. So more stats, right? So just some interesting stats here. One, we saw 22,765 clear text credentials, right? That sounds like a lot. Whoa, there was a lot of clear text credentials flying around this network. However, it was generated by only 10 unique accounts. Just 10 accounts just out there screaming, will someone please take my password? Once every 2 seconds for the length of this show. So there goes one now, right? There were 2.6 billion total packets captured while we were here for the last couple of days. Again, and this is without training, so that's a significant amount of data for such a short amount of time. And 5,768,000 logs that we logged. Logs that we logged.
Logs that we logged.
They're big, they're heavy, they're wood.
Found.
Other interesting stats you can see there are DNS requests. So we've been tracking over time the number of DNS requests. It just tells us, obviously, like how much traffic is going on. And we saw that go up, up, up. Clearly, the attendance for this show isn't quite what it was in 2019. I'm sure we'll get back there. But for this one, because the attendance was lower, we saw a lower amount of traffic overall. I'm pacing like a caged animal again. That's my bad. You all do that. Sorry, Pope. I let you down. But also the types of files that we were submitting to Cisco Threat Grid that tell us, like, you know, hey, is there malware that could potentially be in there? We saw a significant amount of low threats. There weren't a lot of high threat or anything, a little bit of medium, but significant low threats. So kind of quiet this year. It's been
somewhat what we would expect. Again, briefings in comparison, trainings versus briefings even on site is a very large difference.
Yeah. Again, by comparison, at the US show, there was like an active attack on the registration network from a known Russian actor, and then it was like here, we're like, hey, look, we got a little bit of low malware. We're like, cool, thanks, London, we can sleep.
The evolution of the NOC. So again, we've talked about some things, and some of you that have sat through this may see some of this, but kind of starting way back when, from the days of taping access points to the wall and setting up our own open source devices, the big issue that came was stability. We need to make sure that the network was stable. That was our number one job. Trainings and doing anything else that they were doing for labs, demos, et cetera. Our number one job was stability. Obviously, it kind of grew into security, being at a security event, and it goes from there.
Yeah, we in the early days, it was a flat network. It was pretty flat. We just came in the main goal was just to keep the freaking network up. You're trying to have training classes going on. The network was down half the time. When we came in, we were able to stabilize that. I think the first year, there was only a 15-minute outage across the whole conference. Black Hat was very happy. Again, that was 20 years ago, and we've been chugging along ever since. But what we had were classes attacking each other. Training classes are interesting, and so we'll be back to in-person trainings here soon enough. And what happens with that is that somebody learns something new in the class, and then they're like, and they just start attacking their neighbor with it.
Or they don't learn something new and they get bored.
Yeah, and then and so we had classes attacking other classes, everything, so we broke those up. Again, we wanted to start looking at, we read all these articles that were coming out about the Black Hat network that said things like one of the most hostile networks in the world or most dangerous networks in the world. And we're like, is that even true? It sounds cool, and it sounds cool for us to be the folks running that, but we didn't even know if that was true. So that's when we were like, we should do some, get some visibility into that traffic and try to understand, what's actually going on. And that's when we brought NetWitness in to help us take a look. Then we were finding malware. We were like, what do we want to do with this malware? Well, we want to see what it does. So we brought in Cisco with Threat Grid, and we threw it into Threat Grid and detonated it to see what it did. The identity and access management part came because of a partner who's no longer a partner, and not specifically to this, but just the show grew and our needs changed. But with the best intentions, they had made some changes to configurations outside of discussing it with us, and they pushed some updates and other stuff, and then they broke things essentially, right? So we had a 3-hour outage. It was the longest outage we had in I think at that point it was 14 years that we had been doing it, and and it's still the longest outage we ever had. So we were like, okay, only the two of us should be able to actually commit. And so that's why we brought that in.
And then endpoint, one of the big things there, kind of growing where, as we were seeing what we were seeing, controlling what we were controlling at that point, one of the big concerns became registration. So companies that they rent the laptops from or iPads or whatever would bring these in. And at one point we saw a registration laptop plugged in that was already owned. So basically wanted to make sure that everything there was sanitized, as that's really kind of the keys to the kingdom, if you will. Everybody at this show, it's going to be a big black eye for us if anybody wants to take the registration data. So that's obviously kind of what we try and protect the most. And then, as you can see, everything growing here, automation is a big concern. There's a whole lot that we've done, and we touch on that here in just a minute.
All right, so the automation piece was really about the fact that as the show scaled, we didn't have the capabilities to go running from room to room. Because of the way that we have the network segmented and we've got different access points in different classes, so we know where people are connected or the subnet for that class, we could say in a training class, hey, this room, there's somebody who's got malware on their machine or they're passing clear text creds or whatever.
It used to be one of the funnest parts of our job.
It was fun because the door, you open the door and you come in and everybody's like, uh-oh, someone's in trouble. And it's not that you're in trouble, we're just trying to educate you. But when we started doing this, it was 1,500 people at the US show. Now it's 25,000. So we didn't have the ability to go running from room to room. And so we were like, well, let's set something up so that if we detect clear text credentials, confirm malware, or crypto mining, we can at least throw up a captive portal page, which we do with the Palo Alto, so that the next time they go to browse to something, they'll get this warning that comes up and says, warning from the Black Hat NOC, we've detected this. And if you want further information, they could reach out to us or stop by the NOC. If not, they just hit continue and they ignore it and they can continue to beacon out to whatever it is that they're communicating to. But at least we felt like we were doing our part because, as I said previously, even though folks describe the Black Hat Network as one of the most dangerous networks in the world, we wanted attendees to leave safer than they had arrived, right? And I
still don't think we can say we've seen a compromise happen on site. Everything that shows up is generally...
It's already been there. You show up with it. Yeah, they come with it, right? Do you want to walk through this?
Yeah, so this was how that kind of worked and how this is flowing. Basically, we see that malware, crypto mining, or clear text passwords. The source solution at this point works between all the vendors that we need and automates this piece and kind of has the dead man switch that we approve. But basically, we identify that through packet. We enrich that data through the wireless and firewall for the users and endpoint machine. We automate adding them to a dynamic user group to Palo Alto, who then we basically get batch emails approving those users that have been put into those dynamic user groups. The point of that was so that we didn't all of a sudden accidentally add everybody if the source solution had something going on there. We basically respond, yes, it adds those to the dynamic user group. And the next time any of those users hit a clear text website, they will be presented with their captive portal.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Bart and I. Sometimes we mess up. And we didn't want it to just start throwing up captive portal to every single person.
Or people on our team
and be like, and that with the message, stop by the NOC for more information, right? So several thousand people all get the same message and suddenly we're real busy. And then, again, the source solution, in this case, it's RSA's NetWitness Orchestrator, and these are just a couple of playbooks for blocking IP addresses, which we don't often do, but we'll talk about one instance where we did, or, again, sending out those like malware samples to threat grid, that kind of thing. So we do try to use automation to help us adapt to scale. All right, it's story time.
Stories.
Yeah. So some of the things that we saw at this show, it was interesting because we were literally minutes into the keynote yesterday when somebody in the keynote room, first kind of did a little tapping of the keynote speaker, a little, hey, what's going on there? A little touching of the Stanford servers, and then started to scan the network looking for goodies. We we saw that, we clearly knew in that case that this wasn't somebody doing a demo. That's why we don't block things normally at Black Hat, is because we don't want to be the reason that somebody on stage is trying to do a demo. We see it as malicious and then we kill it, right? Our job is to detect the bad within the bad, a needle in a needle stack, if you will. But in this case, this is the very start of the first day. Clearly somebody's doing something they shouldn't, and so we just blocked them. In this particular instance, we just blocked their MAC address. They didn't roll the MAC address. They never came back. Clearly not the most skilled of users, but either way, they're not,
Give it a shot.
They're not chatting on the network riff. They started to after they behaved themselves.
What's your sign? So we'll call ourselves out, if you want to say it that way. We're okay to do that. Again, if everybody can learn from it. This isn't necessarily us, but this was one of our devices, if you will. So the signs out in front of the NOC rotating through dashboards. We have done that a whole lot of different ways in the past, and that's actually a harder problem than you'd think to get dashboards onto a device outside of a secure location. So basically not providing network there, what we have found is a solution that you can upload images and it will send them to a website that comes back to a Raspberry Pi on the back of those TVs. Everything is encrypted except when you upload a asset. So for example, when we would push one of those images, it would do a clear text post with that said asset and said credentials to get into that location. So ideally, somebody could go log in and change some signs for us. We took that data and are letting the proper people know, but it was something that we noticed. It was one of the tools that we were using. It looked okay until it wasn't. So interesting to see that. Again, one of those that you just check yourself, even trust but verify. We say that all the time. People that come say they were on a VPN and we see stuff, just verify.
Yeah, I'll go further. Jessica always says no, zero trust, right?
That's fair.
But this is another example of when you're selecting tools to use in your environment, take a look at what's going on in the wire and look a little bit deeper, because in this case, everything looked like it was fine. It was all encrypted until that asset got pushed, and then we could take the credentials from that, go log in and do everything else on the other parts that were encrypted. So as you're introducing applications or tools or different things to your environment, go see what changes when you add that thing.
We've seen VPNs before where everything was encrypted once the VPN was there, but the login into the VPN was
in the clear.
So it's stuff like that. Just make sure.
Yeah, so you just check your tools, look at your traffic, see what's going on. You don't know if you don't know. So in this case, we saw what looked like the dark comet rat, like somebody was communicating to a domain affiliated with that particular rat. We thought, well, maybe this is a demo or something. Maybe someone's doing something. Let's just watch it. And then we watched it. And we watched it move from access point to access point. And we were like, oh, probably not a demo then, right? They're moving from different rooms. Oh, they're in the expo floor now. Oh, they're shopping for Pokemon cards. So we're like, this is likely not a demo on stage. It's not likely not a vendor. But, at least in this case, we were like, all right, that's actually malware. And we're able, again, to deliver a captive portal. Since that person's moving through the space, that's what makes it more difficult during the briefings themselves, is as people are moving around, the only way that we can communicate with them is to say, well, the next time they talk to us, let's give them a message. And so we let them know, like, hey, malware.
Sometimes we get email addresses and can just email them.
Also, you got to jump on that Chansey. Get it right now, whatever.
Reggie! So this one's interesting. Again, one of the vendors that's here supporting the show uses an application that is for communication between that vendor. This tool is generally apparently an on-site box, but they are using a SaaS solution for this, and it was spewing to what looked like to us initially our registration data out in the clear.
Yeah, like genuinely.
We got this is the closest that we've ever kind of come to a panic when we saw that. So there was a lot of that
I just started rocking back and forth. Bart was petting my head. He's like, "It's okay, little buddy, it's okay." And I was like, "It's not okay, it's not."
We took as much information as we could, found out where it was, went and spot checked all of that against our registration database. It was not our registration user data. There was some amount of PII that was being spewed from that tool used by said vendor. We have provided them that information to go speak with the vendor. But again, it's one of those that everything that was being sent out to the SaaS solution was completely in the clear. It gave us probably the biggest aneurysm we've had from anything that we've dealt with. But again, one of those things that just making sure what it is, seeing that, digging in, and taking all precautions that we can at that point. So, we've seen some weird stuff, and that one was scary.
Well, and this is, again, so these are, like, we're up here talking about the stuff that we see on the NOC, but we're really talking about our security foundations, right? Now we're talking about, we chose a particular application for us to look at the screens, like have shiny pictures come up on the screen outside of the NOC, and it turns out clear text credentials, right? But we wouldn't know that if we didn't look. In this case, now we're talking about a third party, bringing a third party into the conference to run a different aspect of the show than we are in control of, or Black Hat as an organization is really in control of. They select their tools just like we select our own. But in this case, the third party vendor chose a tool that had some issues, right? So as you're bringing in third parties, take a look at what is happening and what they could be potentially exposing you to. So again, it seems silly. It's a silly NOC run by silly guys. But in the end, again, we're talking about security foundations. In this case, this is just funny. We saw somebody who was attempting to communicate to the Dread forum. They were putting the address into their address bar and trying
it means
to
they
browse.
opened Chrome and typed in the .onion address.
They put it into their browser and were like, "I'm going to get me some meth." But in reality, they had never actually, connected to Tor. So
now they're just asking Umbrella, "Can I get to this .onion address?"
Yeah, can I get to this .onion? And then in the end, they figured it out. So you can see here, tunneling outbound Tor. They were like, "No, whoopsie." And then
they turned on Tor.
And connected and bought,
meth.
I don't know, or human body parts. What's on the dark web? Who knows? So yeah, we just thought that was funny. Although I will say, this is another thing. So again, as a threat hunter, that's my gig, right? I'm a threat hunter. This is something that you should be looking for in your environments as well. Look for requests to .onion addresses that could potentially tell you, one, that just a user is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, right? So they're doing this outside of Tor. Or it could also be the first indicator that somebody has a ransomware issue on that particular machine, or the machine sitting next to it. I can only imagine they're going, okay, I go to this address, and they don't know that they're supposed to connect to Tor or a Tor browser. Look for DNS requests to .onion addresses in your logs. If you see something and it's outside of it, it might clue you into something before it gets really bad. And again, that's, just advice foundation type of thing.
So we've talked about from the amount of time that ransomware kicked up and then kind of slowed down, and then we saw a huge spike in crypto mining. It kind of goes with as Bitcoin goes. So right now, obviously, as cryptocurrency is just soaring, we saw an uptick in crypto mining. So again, we will inform people if we detect crypto mining from their machines. If you just want to use our bandwidth, but you're here doing it, then so be it. But we want to inform people, obviously, when that's the case. So if you can see some of those other URL categories, this is the odd one. So if you can see the middle, cryptocurrency had 3,500 sessions, while adult only had 1,400. So it's a new us. Let's all give ourselves a hand. We like mining.
I was going to say
that's not usually the case. I can tell you that much.
Crypto's better than sex. You heard it here first, people. It's right there on the slide. We have the stats to prove it.
And then
out.
dating was a close third to porn. So
yeah, I mean, but
good on you
still,
guys.
if you add together adult and dating, still not as much as cryptocurrency. Shiba Inu to the moon.
You did it.
All right.
He's invested. Don't do it. Oh man.
And then
This came in late. This was a good one to
Yeah, this one just happened. Like, these is freshies. The reason these slides are so bad is because we make them literally just before we get up here. We're trying to take the most interesting stuff that we saw or stats from an hour before we get up here so we have the most data that we can and present it to you. I saw feedback one time from one of these outreach sessions where someone was like, the slides are not the best
They
slides.
do suck.
And I'm like, dude, I made them on a tablet 15 minutes before I got on stage. But this was interesting, which is one of the things that we throw into Cisco Threat Grid is different file types, and PDFs are one of those to see if there's any malware embedded in the PDF. And in this case, the preview for it came up and it was a certificate for a COVID test. And the COVID test came back negative, which is great for this individual, but there was a lot of personally identifiable information that was on this certificate. And then the team at Cisco started digging a little bit deeper, and they're like, and we don't have the logo.
You could go to that domain and pull it. That was readily available on the internet, so it looked pretty bad that you could go download that PDF.
Yeah, so we were like, okay, well, like they came up and said, oh, this is worse than we thought. And we were like, why is it worse than you thought? And they're like, I don't think this is real. This is a service that somebody is offering where they're able to print off a negative COVID test. It's a scam. Like, anybody can go and just print it off so they can travel. So we're collecting all the information for that. We'll turn it over to whoever we need to. But, if you're looking for a negative COVID test, you've got a couple of minutes to shut that down. But, yeah, so that was interesting. Initially, we thought, oh, this is just a leaked PII. Now, this is real information about an attendee that's here because they're filling it out to have it reflect who they are so they can travel somewhere. But now it's publicly accessible on the internet and anybody can browse to this URL and find it. And then that's the kind of thing you get when you're working with like a scam site where you just, paying $10 for a negative COVID test result. But yeah, be safe out there, kids.
The future. So we've been talking about kind of what we're doing going forward and some of the other things that we've grown. We've talked about the evolution and all that kind of stuff. And we talked about this a little bit in Vegas. And a lot of the future plans for us are back end. So trying to not make shitty looking slides. So we've talked about ways to genuinely...
I will leave this stage right now.
I would not be shocked. So a way to provide that data in a standard format to our partners to get back to us in a time that we can put this on stage for you guys. Some other things, back-end processes. We can be much more efficient in a lot of the things that we do for our partners and for ourselves. Take some of that stress out so that we have a little more room in our hearts for the aneurysms when we think the registration data is disappearing. We have talked about some of the historical data. We have anecdotal historical data. We keep that, but we're trying to do a better job of having a back-end to store data from show to show and kind of have trending data as well. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to do to make it a little bit easier on ourselves, but hopefully that will reflect on you guys. But that's also something that we wanted to make sure we're not doing nothing here. And then giving back to the community, I guess the other pieces we've talked about, possibly some white papers with data that we see or blog posts, OIP being open source and kind of working with the community. So look for more from us in the future, but those are some of the things that we're talking about at this point that we're trying to get going forward.
And those will maybe look better than the slides.
I used to make them. I used to make them, and now he does. So you can only imagine what that means.
But yeah, so hopefully, again, like we have a place that we can put them. We do have a NOC page on Black Hat, but right now that normally just says when this is going to happen, and it's a picture of our smiling faces. Like if you want that, if you want to cut it out, put it on your wall, in your cubicle, whatever it is, you do what you want. But yeah, so the hope is to have a lot more actionable things that we can deliver back. Folks seem to like this session, just one, to hear the weird stories, but also because it's interesting to see what a network looks like when everybody on it knows about security and should know better. And unfortunately, we seem to still get it wrong, which means we're gonna have jobs for a long time.
Hopefully.
And that is that.
Quiet, we have a couple minutes for questions if anybody has any. Mics in the back, virtual, so talk to them
Yeah,
there.
there are mics back there. No one? Anyone? I'll
Yeah,
just
they
wait.
do. Yeah,
I'm
they
just gonna
do.
stay.
Don't cut
It
'em
says
off.
we have 4 minutes and 57 seconds.
You stare at each
Goodness.
other or them?
Okay.
You're killing me. No, they're not even paying attention.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wait.
Here we go. Here we go.
Hi.
How are you?
I was curious, what do you do for PKI infrastructure if you need to do certs or anything TLS related within the conference?
So within the conference, we actually don't have PKI infrastructure for our devices. I think a lot of that, there is some things that we've done for security around MFA and user ID that we do there. However, anything else that we would do, basically, I mean, some of the biggest things you're going to be dealing with there would be man in the middle and decrypting things. And I assume if I try to build a PKI infrastructure and pushed anything to your devices to man in the middle, that would be some big deals. There's
Did
other.
try that like years ago. We did say like, hey, would you be interested in us like providing a certificate or whatever? And the resounding response
Was no.
There is no scenario where I will ever install something from Black Hat onto my machine. And we were like, this was a test you guys passed.
I wouldn't install a certificate from something here pushing.
For
Just
clients,
for the trust.
yeah, but what about the devices, like the iPads and tablets you have downstairs?
We don't have any full PKI at this point. I think we've kind of talked about the solutions and security around that. I think full PKI at this point is not necessarily there. Again, keep it simple, stupid. And I think that we have, I mean, we got to be careful on our words that we choose up here. I wouldn't say that we're anything proof, but we feel like we're secure in what we've got right now with those devices. Thank you. How are you?
Ask. So if you find any common credentials, common users in all the Black Hats, so the same kind of user generally go to Black Hat US, Europe, and Asia.
Admin.
No,
Yeah, that guy goes everywhere.
I meant the people, not the credentials, but like the people, the users.
We've never correlated show to show to be like.
Well, that's actually, we can't.
Yeah.
We don't have most of that data.
And
actually.
here's why is everything, because we do capture all the packets that fly around like for analysis and reports and again to pull malware samples out and throw them into sandboxes and everything. But like when we tear down, which will be in about an hour and a half or so, all of the data is wiped completely. So we don't even have access to that. We are security practitioners. We are very big on privacy as well. We don't want to have your data in order to be able to do correlation.
Our data's in there too. So
Yeah,
we
because
don't want.
So while that would be cool, it's too much risk to just start storing stuff, and it's just kind of a.
What's yours? Should I be looking for it from show to
Yeah.
show?
I was wondering if the people you actually tell that they have issues fix it, or it just remains as it is in the long run.
So yeah, I mean that's the thing about broadcasting out and just saying or putting up a captive portal is we're like, here is the type of activity that we're seeing. If this is expected behavior, just click continue and move on. We have no way of knowing if that person ever goes and cleans off their.
Or if it was actually even malicious. So again, if somebody's intentionally doing that on a box for whatever reason and has threads that aren't.
Unfortunately, I think our experience has been when we have gone into classrooms and said to someone like, you have this coming from your machine, they're often very resistant to that. Like we are seeing documents coming from your machine. Like I saw a bunch of financial documents. This was at a US show a couple of years ago. And the gentleman in question was like, absolutely not. Like he's like, I'm a security, I know what I'm doing. I was like, all right, well, that's fine. He's like, I'm like, you think that your stuff is encrypted, but it's not, I assure you. And he said, no, look, I'm connected to a VPN. And he points to the system tray and says, I'm connected to a VPN. And I'm like, okay, well, you have this much left on your mortgage. And he was like, like what? And I'm like, let's figure this out. And it was just, split tunneling wasn't configured correctly. And so there was a bunch of stuff that was going out in the clear. And I was like, why would you even be transferring all this financial stuff? And he's like, well, my son's going to university in the fall and I was submitting it for financial assistance and all whatever. But often because we're security people, when we are approached that potentially we have a problem,
resistant to believe it.
we see people resist it. And so we don't
If you
know
come
what
tell
someone's
us.
response is to the captive portal, but hopefully
If you tell
they at
us we
least
suck,
try.
we're okay with that.
Yeah,
Let's fix it,
I'm
so.
used to it. I'm used to being told. So I just believe it. Thanks a lot, Dad. Okay.
That's it.
So that's it. We're
Thanks,
out of time.
everybody.
Thanks for coming.